Good evening, traders. Hey, happy Sunday. Look, the markets are cooking again. We've got a lot to uncover, so let's spend a little bit of time digging into what's happening in the general indexes and then what am I watching for the coming week. I've got a couple swing trades, a couple day trades, and a lot of things are looking fairly juicy. So let's dig in first to the QQQs. That's where we always want to start. And then we move on to the other indexes, right? These days, the SPY and the Dow and stuff don't really matter as much because, well, nobody's trading anything from, the SPY these days anyways, unless you're just rubbing your balls on some bank stocks. Like, what are you really going to do, right? So we always look at the QQQ first, then we go to the SPY, then we go to the IWM. So couple things. Number one, we are a little bit overbought on the QQQs. We've been just grinding. My expectation at this moment is probably that the indices do break out to highs, but the big hairy Indian butt is that anytime you do that, there is going to be one kind of nasty shakeout along the way. So, as you kind of grind up, be prepared. There's going to be probably like a 2% down day somewhere, whether it's up here, whether it's there, or even a little bit before. Anytime you kind of run into these highs, there's always that shakeout, that kind of liquidity move. Get out all the rookies, right? And then the pros come in and scoop it back up. I mean, as short-term traders, for us, there's not much we can do except we just stop out, reload, or you hold through it. But, if you're using leverage or options, that's not really an option, right? So for most of us, you got to stop out and then you reload, but expect that. So the worst thing that you can do when the markets start grinding up, I do this all the time when I was new and I still fall for it, is you get complacent. You're like, we're going to highs. And as the market starts to inch up, you add a little bit more exposure. Maybe you hold a couple more swing trades. Maybe you amplify the leverage a tad bit, right? Maybe your risk profile for the type of stocks you start to trade, they start to cook a little bit. And then before you know it, it's a nasty McGee. So just kind of be mindful of all that. It's coming. It always does. Now, look, on the other side of things, I do think that everything looks pretty good. So let's not get too carried away that, the world is ending. But I do think we'll get that kind of 1.5%, 2% pull at some point. It may even last a couple days. You could pull back 3% or whatever, right? But always just be aware that these type of things, they're just around the corner. You got to be a little bit careful. If you look at the SPY, we're right at the all-time highs, right? But we're grinding into it, and so you're not necessarily coiled up. Even though you see a level, you're not coiled up going into it. You're kind of running a race before the race starts, right? If you think about a breakout to all-time highs or some type of breakout in general, that's a start of a race. And if you're running a race into it, then right, you have a higher chance of failing. So I would give it I would like for it to just get that kind of just quick little dump off. That would kind of reset a couple things. I think we're going to be doing pretty good. The IWM is going to be an interesting thing. Look, all eyes are on the Fed. The Fed's coming up on Wednesday. If they cut again, maybe the IWM finally breaks out. Now, look, this particular day here, I think it was the Fed cut, and then nothing happened, right? And then we kind of dumped off. And so on and so forth. So the IWM, every time it looks good, it hurts us. So every time we've come close here, man, I've been trying to buy calls to break this bad boy out. And every time I'm like in the green, like 10, 15, 20%, and it's like, and it's a heartbreaker. Thank God for stop losses, but this thing has been a heartbreaker for me. I'm not feeling, I like the setup, but I liked it last time, right? Like I've liked it a lot of these times. So we do got to be a little bit careful on it. On the other side of things, look, I think natural gas is going to be a big story probably in 2026. We did the whole nuclear stuff for the AI energy, right? But Oklo and all these companies already said, like, there's not going to be any nuclear for, anytime soon. So, we do have to kind of look at this and say, what's the realistic, right? What's the realistic kind of way to get the energy going for all these AI projects nobody's probably ever going to use, right? And that's probably going to be the gas. I'm just taking a guess because those nukes pulled back and then this started to ramp up, and so it feels like that's like the switch over that's happening, right? Like, I don't know anything about the fundamentals, all this stuff, but just based on price action and putting kind of 2 and 3 together, and hopefully it adds up to 5. So keep an eye on natural gas. I've been waiting to see kind of how this marinates. I really wish it didn't gap up on Friday, or I would have entered on the break over the 200-day moving average, which is for me like kind of a clear sign to kind of get in on maybe a new trend forming. But the old bastard gapped up, and it gapped up a lot, right? It's whole ATR plus another percent. So at that point, you got to leave it alone. Let's take a look at some of the other indexes here before we get into the watch list. Old gold is still looking good. I don't know what went down on Friday. Man, I was cooking on some of this, and I was looking at, I was in some NAM, and it looked like we had it, and then it kind of kerplunked. And so, what I'm doing on this kind of gold type of trade is I'm swinging some, and then, I'm using futures contracts and just some options to do short-term trading around kind of this bigger breakout that's in the works. So, and I like to do that where it's if I can get a low position, I'll swing in one account, and then, as a day trader, you kind of want to be day trading what? Stuff that is trending that you think is going to move on a bigger picture. So I like the overall look, but Friday, it really would have been nice if it didn't roll over. I try not to put too much credence on action on some of these things on Fridays and options expiration and stuff like that. Silver looks fantastic too. You can see here you're flagging out. Would it really an ideal spot, if it could just back and fill one more time. I think one more time, even just to the 9 EMA. I think that would set the, right? You got pet the snake, right? Don't say that to the woman on the subway though, but you see that thing going through. It's popping up, pet the snake, stop at the 9, and we'll see what's going on. I like the overall look of it. We'll see what's what. Let's get into the watch list. Apple had multiple pieces of news out. It looks like a bunch of executives are leaving, but it barely pulled back. 10 points on 300, right into support. I'm almost thinking this is just, I don't know, this is a proxy for something else that I don't personally understand. But, it's just a trend continuation pullback into the 20. Somewhere between 9 and 20, I think, is a good spot. I got it on a watch list. You got to trade the calls with Apple. So, you got the 282s or something like that. And we'll see what's up. AMTM, this is a nuclear play. You can see here, the 9's caught up after earnings. I think this spot right here is probably a little bit of a trigger. It's the previous day's high. That's the dotted green line. And then you got just a little bit of a range break setting up there. AVGO, it didn't give me an entry. There was one spot to enter on Friday, but I was already gone for the day. I like the overall look of this. I think this thing probably speeds up. BE got a level here about 120. I would consider Friday's action an inside day. You get an inside day on this bad boy. If it takes out 120, I think you're in a spot to maybe. I'd be surprised if it just rolled and broke 150 by the end of the year. But hey, crazier things have happened, But I do think we kind of fill in some of this stuff, and we'll see kind of what happens here. Hey, this Dachshund is interesting. So look, Dachshund has got a big old breakout. It doesn't do that much volume, so you got to this is more of a swing trade setup. Something you tuck into a longer term account or an IRA. If you look here, at the weekly chart, it's a nice spot. Guys, what I love to do, even though I'm, 99% of my trades are day trades, when I'm done with my list, I always filter through the weeklies to make sure, and see like how extended things are from their bases and stuff like that. But you got to really like the weekly chart on this. That's why I think it's probably a swing. That and the lack of liquidity. Gold we talked about. Look, Google, I'm watching this for a day trade here. To me, this is not a swing setup. It's just too, I mean, if you see here, it's like 120 points from the 200-day moving average. Just 50 points away from, the 50-day moving average. That kind of extension does signal, obviously, that it's got a lot of momentum, but you're getting into that weird spot where, you could get one of those kind of 5-10% pulls, like, anytime you get that far from your EMAs. Yeah, if we need a short at some point, I got a bunch of alerts set here at 40 on iron. Lemonade here. You got a 80 breakout. I'm going to pretend like these two wicks just don't exist. I mean, they do exist, but the chart looks a lot better if we just pretend like it never happened. I love this stock. It's also a swing trade setup. It just doesn't do the liquidity you need to day trade it. Lululemon, this feels like a bottom on it. You had a little bit of an uptick in volume. It feels like maybe, I wouldn't call it accumulation per se, but it feels like the selling has subsided. And you got, this gap filled out into 200. There's like a little bit of a magnet up into this area. I like that. Like, not the sexiest names, obviously. And of course, we know you can't trust no womans that wears the Lululemons, but shit, right? Stock is a stock. For moral reasons, like I don't have any Lululemons because I've been tricked by many women's wearing these kind of pants. It's a false advertising. It's no different than a man. If a man lies to a woman about how much money he makes, this is their version of that, right? You meet somebody, they're wearing Lululemons. You're like, wow, what a nice body you got, right? It's like me telling somebody I'm a billionaire, right? I'm not, right? Not ever gonna be, right? And that's how they're tricking you. And we're tricking them, they're tricking us, and that's why nobody's getting married and having babies anymore. It ain't right. It ain't right, that's for sure. Now, let's go in. Dude, look at this thing. We got a little bit of a bear flag here. Let's see what's up. I think this thing still rolls over, even if Bitcoin does kind of hold up here. It's just a bleeder. We've got a spot here. OND is still watching this one. It's a grinder at the moment. This is the only thing I can do on this. Whenever it gets really ugly, I'm going to set some alerts and look to add. It does not work well when you chase it up. You gotta buy when you cry on this thing. And then, hey, this RBRK, this will take a few days to settle out, but let's keep an eye on this. It exploded on earnings. The intraday action was crap, but let's see if it kind of tightens up here. That might be a little bit of a swing trade setup that shows up maybe a week from now. They knocked it out of the park on their earnings. You got a $100 magnet on this. I think it's got a good look to it. So that's the list. I'm sticking to it. You can add in Reddit. Oh, hold on here. I got a couple more names here. So these storage stocks. Sorry for the extra long video. These storage stocks, they got the Jahoohus, right? So you got WDC. That's probably the best chart, cleanest chart we got on the books, right? And then SNDK is starting to remount here, right? So, it'll pick up some steam if it can get kind of over this 20. I think WDC just looks a lot cleaner. Obviously, there's STX too, and that looks similar to WDC. But at $300 and only 3 million shares of volume, I think that's probably a little bit too thin. And then we'll see kind of what's up. If we need any shorts, I think this VST also looks like a little bit of a bleeder here. If you see here, like you're just kind of rolling right under this bad boy. That too, I think, that could be shorted. There's quite a few of these kind of names out there. So keep an eye on that. And look, inside days on rare earths, I'm thinking these are still going to get picked up. You can see how tight the range was on USAR. I was fucking around with this thing, trying to break this thing out a couple times here. Yeah, it was inside day action. What are you gonna do, right? And then I think some of its friends probably, we keep on the watch list too. Like you can even see here, like MP's got a really, nice look on it too. So that's the list, guys. I'm sticking to it. I love you guys. Peace.